Hey everybody, welcome to the Patty G Show. I'm your host, Patty G. We are here at Building 5 with Jared Loftus of MaxBoring, a tech company, but by no means has he always been a tech guy. We're going to go through his weave and web of his business endeavors as an entrepreneur and his journey thus far, and really just the life of a serial entrepreneur and leading everything up to where he's at now with exits and sales and purchases, acquisitions, mergers, you name it, we're going to talk about it. But before we do, I want to give a big, wonderful shout out and thank you to the amazing folks that bring you this show each and every week. Falaya Real Estate, Horizon Financial Group, Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge, Building 5 being our location sponsor, Currency Bank, Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport, and you know our out for the day is brought to you by McLavy Ltd, also Mimosa Handcrafted Jewelry. Without further ado, Jared, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you taking your time out of your day and coming
Absolutely.
out of your battles with energy, although we won't go
we don't
too
have to go
much
into that.
that.
Hopefully somebody from there is listening. They give me a call. I won't have to be on hold anymore.
It's things you got to do as a business owner,
Man,
right?
there's so many things that you don't learn in business school about just the nuances of getting through the day.
Yeah, or the knowing how to talk to certain customer representatives, and it's some you got to come at them aggressive, and some you got to talk to them like you're your best friend.
You're right. And I can usually, actually, I've gotten to the point where I can hear in their voice if this is going to go well or not.
Do you ever hang up and say, I'm going to call somebody else?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. I'm like, this is not going to end well. Let me try again. I'll bear through the 15, 20 minute hold and get the right person.
See, I haven't come across that yet.
I don't wish it upon anyone.
I've had to figure out, all right, this person, I've had to work them and massage them a little bit. Be like, all right, come on, let me see if I can work you out to a little better situation.
Yeah.
But never.
I mean, at the end of the day, in any situation, there are people still at the other end of the line. We live in this world where AI is taking over everything, but a lot of places it's not. And there's still a person you have to talk to that may have to talk to another person. And so I do usually take the approach of you got to approach them like that. This isn't a robot. This is a person that is having a good or a bad day. And that has to be taken into consideration how you approach them, and that's through all of business, not just dealing with the customer service rep at the utility company, but in who you're doing business with, your customers, your vendors, your employees, any of that. I think it's easy to miss out on people are people at the end of the day,
and people ultimately make the world of business go round.
Totally.
So, but back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Who are you, man, and what the heck do you do?
Man, you said I was in this tech company. I describe myself as like a blue-collar Bitcoin miner these days. I feel more like a high-tech janitor than anything. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Born and raised in small-town Mississippi. Grew up with two younger brothers, a dad that was an entrepreneur, mom was a school teacher, and I think just seeing what my dad was doing and kind of just inner creativity and wanting to build things naturally got into entrepreneurial endeavors as early as fifth grade.
So what does your dad do?
So he had a lawn maintenance business, landscape, cutting grass, things like that. Just, again, blue collar stuff.
I love it.
But made a really good business out of it that provided well for our family.
Okay. Yeah. My family, one of my family businesses that my parents own is an industrial landscaping company.
Okay.
So can definitely relate. I did lawn cutting from
12
on, so definitely feel you on that.
But fortunately or unfortunately, I am allergic to grass, so I was able to, I had to do it as a kid, and have slowly been able to work my way out. It was clear that that was not going to be the line for me.
So fifth grade, first.
So fifth grade,
what were we selling?
I was selling some beaded necklaces that I would make. A lot of times I was selling them to teachers because they're the ones with money, not fifth graders. And I'll never forget, one day I'm in class and it's the middle of the day and I get a call from the principal's office over the loudspeaker, Jared Loftus, please come to the office. And everybody kind of looks at me what's going on? I was a pretty good kid. Why am I being called to the principal's office? And so I go to the principal's office, and we have this round for round kind of back and forth on whether or not I'm allowed to sell anything on campus.
Okay.
And I'm kind of one of these kids that, I knew the rules. I'd gone through the handbook. I'd read it like cover to cover.
No way.
And there was nowhere in there that said anything about not being able to sell things on campus. Okay. I mean, not even in a gray zone. I mean, it was just not covered. And so that was my argument. I'm like, but I get called in, you're going to have to go, you're going to get suspended, 3 days suspension. I'm like, whoa, like, well, but why? Like what? Well, you can't sell things. Well, why not? Where does it say it? Well, in the handbook. I said, well, can you show me where it says that in the handbook? And it goes from like 3 days suspension to detention to, we're still paddling back in the day in Summerall, Mississippi. So there's corporal punishment, all the way down to I walked out free and clear. Because it was like, well, where is this coming from? Because I'm not breaking any stated rules. And I get back to the classroom and over the loudspeaker. So they called me in my classroom, right?
Right.
But so not the entire school, but I get back to the classroom and then an entire school-wide announcement goes out from the principal. Just want to let everybody know you are not allowed to sell anything on campus. That is a new rule going forward. And everybody just like looks at me and knows exactly what just went down. So that was my start. And then cutting grass, just odds and ends. Like if there was a way to make a buck, then I was figuring it out to the point.
The Patty G Show is now proudly presented by Baton Rouge Regional Airport. Y'all, I fly exclusively Baton Rouge whenever I best can. And what they've got now since June of 23 is a nonstop flight from capital to capital, Baton Rouge Airport to Washington, D.C. You're able to make the round trip in 1 day. They've got the earliest flight, or even earlier than flying into New Orleans. You can fly to Baton Rouge to go from Baton Rouge to D.C., round trip 1 day. If you've got meetings in D.C. or you've got business gatherings, you definitely want to fly to Baton Rouge and go from capital to capital. They are a proud presenter. We are now brought to you by Baton Rouge Regional Airport. Thank you so very much for bringing them on as the latest sponsor of the Patty G Show.
To the point of that got me to college selling. I'd made some T-shirts for different organizations like youth group and different clubs and whatnot.
So making T-shirts, I did T-shirts.
Okay.
So I'm curious what process you did. I mean, I know we say, just making T-shirts, but we had to backpedal to determine what year we're in to know, are we doing screen printing? Are we doing direct-to-garment printing?
Oh, no, direct-to-garment
what are we
from
doing,
the future, man. That's from the future. So this is late night. Well, so I graduated high school in 2000. So 98, 99, this still screen printing, right?
Right.
And then early 2001, 2002, direct-to-garment was there, but it was still kind of, yeah, I mean, it was like a bulletproof vest kind of thing when it'd print out. It was just like real stuff. So this is old school screen printing. And I wanted to run for student body president at Southern Miss. And to do that, I needed to raise some money. So I was selling T-shirts for each home game for Southern Miss and whoever we were playing. And I did that. Sold one each game, had one each game. Some games were better than others. Kind of learned the market, the ups and downs of big opponent, big game, big sales. You know, we play a kind of a no-name team that's a throwaway game, not as many sales. And so learned about just inventory and how, I put it all on a credit card, paid for everything on a credit card, and then made enough money to pay that off and then have some extra and then just roll that forward. And so fast forward, I do that. I run for student body president. I won. I thought that was my path. Like, student government and then going into politics, working in Washington, Capitol Hill, all that stuff. And my senior year had to do I was in business school and had to do a business plan that was the class to submit a business plan. And everybody was making up businesses and just writing a plan. And I asked the teacher if I could do something like, I actually had this idea, can I do it on that? And that forced me into looking into, well, could I take this T-shirt thing I was doing and make a go at it? And from there, I knew that, I love Southern Miss to the top, but I knew that was not the market that I was going after as far as if I'm going to build a business, I need to go after a larger student population, a bigger football program, things like that. and and so I kind of looked at Hattiesburg and drew like an 8-hour radius around that of where would make sense, and looked at Starkville and Oxford and Tuscaloosa and Gainesville and Baton Rouge, and came down to Baton Rouge to actually look at a physical location to do a store, and found that spot across the street from the Chimes, and like it's all she wrote from there. I mean, it kind of, it's like I just kept taking steps, and it kept moving me forward, and next thing you know, I've got a retail store on the corner of Chimes and Highland.
Wait. So you had the building across from Chimes?
Yeah, Tiger District.
That was okay.
That was me. Wow.
That was you?
Wow.
Whoa. Boom. Okay.
Crazy stuff.
So how long did you do that for?
So I opened that like literally graduate. I actually had to go back to Hattiesburg to graduate because I'd already moved here. It just kind of all came together. That part of campus was kind of underdeveloped at the time. There was a Claire's that was there that had gone out of business. There was a Verizon Wireless that was vacant. The Foot Locker was hanging on. The Gap store was hanging on, and so this property was vacant. And I'm like, this makes too much sense. Like, for what I want to do, I want to sell collegiate merchandise. LSU had just won the national championship. You've got this huge student population. Like, it all was lining up and made sense to me. And thankfully I look back on it, I'm like, why did they give me a lease? Like, there was no reason to believe that I could do this. Like, all of these things that could have gone wrong. And I was just like, I guess, young and dumb enough to push forward with it. And so I opened up in what was this old Verizon Wireless, and had no idea what I was doing. I thankfully hired a designer that like an interior designer that helped me make it look like an actual store, not a Verizon store. Not like a 21-year-old it doesn't know what he's doing, putting stuff in a place to sell it. And grew it from there. Right after that, like, the Gap closed, the Foot Locker closed. It was kind of barren there for a little while. Katrina happens. But all of these things were new. I didn't know any better. I was 22, 23, just like, this is just business, and I've got to pay this rent and move forward, and learned a tremendous amount in doing that. And it was an interesting ride getting that business started.
So now, did you have to deal with any licensing with the school or anything like that?
Yeah, all of it. I mean, that was a different time. Maybe you could do what I did then. Today, it's such a different game with, NCAA licensing. Now you've got NIL. I can't even imagine. There's some things that I would have done very differently had NIL been around when I was there. But yeah, I had to navigate the licensing, how to get things manufactured, how to have ideas that I turn into designs that I get made just for us without being the licensee. All that stuff, and again, it was just figuring it out. And I don't think I even realized how much I'd figured out until much later, going through it, when people would make comment. Like, I had vendors that would come into the store. Our kind of thing in the beginning was all of our shirts were $10. Okay. Every t-shirt. So you'd walk in and all, like, sidewalls, back walls, everything in there, all the t-shirts were $10.
Okay.
And I was able to do that because I designed them myself. I had them manufactured myself. So I went straight to the manufacturer instead of having somebody in the middle. And so I still had really good margins. I mean, I had 60, 65% margins on a $10 shirt.
That's not bad.
Absolutely.
That's really good.
Like, that's like good retail margins. And so I had vendors coming in that were trying to sell me t-shirts for $8 wholesale. I'm like, that doesn't work with the model. And they're like, oh, you're never going to make it. You're going to have to raise your prices. You're going to have to do all this stuff. And so we were trying to do a volume game. Like, I wanted you to come in and buy 5 shirts and spend $50 instead of 2 shirts spending $50, with the idea that you got 5 shirts, so you're happier about those 5 shirts than the 2. And it all works out. And that's one of the pieces that would be, almost impossible today. There's minimums in licensing. There's these. I mean, I don't even know. You'd have a hard time getting a blank shirt with nothing on it for those prices today, right? And so, and we evolved over time to. I couldn't do that forever, but that's how we got started, and just learn it. When we first opened, I so didn't know what I was doing that, and I spent all this money to get the store together and open that I didn't have a ton of money for a lot of merchandise. So the idea was, well, I'll sell merchandise. Same thing as previous. Like, I'll sell merchandise. The money from that will help me buy more merchandise, and I'll build it out over time. So literally day one, I had like the same shirt on all of the walls and on the racks, like just to fill the store and make it. You don't want to look and walk into a new store.
Is on the shelf.
Not only all the inventory, but it's like the same shirt just multiple times to make the store look full.
This episode is proudly presented by Gage. Gage is a local company here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. For over 40 years, Gage has provided businesses with the very best telecommunications, IT, and standby power services available. Gage has a variety of services, including Gage Cloud Voice. It is the last phone system your business will ever need. You need to give your business the ability to be accessible anytime, anywhere, and with Gage's cloud-based phone system, you'll be able to accomplish just that. Not only do they have Gage Cloud Voice, they have fully managed IT services that are proactive network monitoring, 24/7, 365, help desk, business continuity. They are there for you. What you're also going to need is some cybersecurity. Gage is there to safeguard your business from potential cyber threats, even when you aren't aware they exist. Gage also is power and leaders in standby generators. They are the #1 Cummins dealer on the Gulf Coast and provide generators to homes and businesses of any size so you can keep life going. Gage, better connected, a proud sponsor of the Patty G Show.
Look full.
So what were people's first impression walking into the store?
They loved it. I mean, we opened up on Alabama weekend. I had a shirt that said "Beat Bama." I remember, in your mind, you're like, oh, it's like a grand opening. You want to do these things. Like, it's already mid-season because we didn't get started. I mean, I graduated in July. I didn't get into the store until August. I'm like, yeah, we're going to get open for football season, right? Like, we didn't get going until November. I had the Beat Bama shirts. I remember they were on a rack kind of inside the door. I hadn't opened it yet. And there's people everywhere. And somebody kind of like looks in and opens the door and was like, is it open? I'm like, yeah, we're open. There was no grand opening. There was no big hurrah. It was just people walked in and started buying things. And I'm like, okay, this is it.
But that's got to be like the best feeling in the world.
There is still nothing really that compares to seeing someone wear a T-shirt that I definitively know I made. Like, people are like, oh, well, like they're all LSU shirts. No, those are like my children. I can spot them from a mile away. I know which ones are mine and which ones are not. And I saw somebody wearing one on Halloween just like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and it was like we did this like LSU kind of ugly Christmas sweater looking sweatshirt that this woman was wearing, and we haven't sold a shirt in 10 years, 15 years.
She kept it.
Yeah, she kept it, and she's wearing it in public, and so I always get a kick out of seeing those out in the wild.
I did T-shirts for about 2 or 3 years.
Oh yeah,
and
when you say you did it, like you. Like
came up with designs,
what
came
kind
up
of
with a brand. So I had a company called Off the Pier.
Okay.
And it started off
like
as
a fishing type?
Yeah. So
okay.
an outdoor fishing type. And
okay.
we had 2 different designs going into it. We had like a shrimp boat with an American flag on the back.
Okay.
And then we had a commercial snapper fishing vessel.
What year is this?
Oh gosh. This has got to be 15, 16.
Okay, not too long ago.
So not too long ago,
but
but
still
long
in the
ago.
age of like Amazon. What was your distribution? How'd you get
Trade
it out?
shows.
Trade shows
and website.
Really? Okay.
And
so were you
media.
selling to other retailers?
Well, I never got that far.
Okay, so you were just selling as the brand. You were direct to consumer.
Right.
Okay.
So I would go and pick up my blanks, and I would go and bring them to a print shop, and they would print them all for me and go back and pick them up, and then I would sell them on my website, trade shows every weekend. And
trade shows like fishing shows? What?
Like holiday markets.
Okay, yeah.
So
like,
like
where people are buying gifts and stuff.
People are going buying gifts. They're going like it's just all these vendors are there.
Did you ever do the Swamp Pop Music Festival?
No,
in
I never
Gonzales?
did Swamp Pop.
I did sell. I've set up there to sell LSU shirts.
I did Holidays.
Holidays
was the biggest market I'd ever done.
Yep.
And for me, the best feeling still is selling more than one shirt to one person.
Oh yeah.
Like I had somebody come in and they bought 5 or 6 shirts, and I was just like, this is incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my most favorite memories in business is 2007. LSU wins the national championship. We go to the national championships. It's a huge deal, right? And we are, that Alabama was 11. So in 07, we go to the national championship. We'd had 2 losses. We weren't really supposed to get there. We did. All the stars aligned, and it's in New Orleans. And so I set up a big tent on the corner of Poydras and Loyola, navigated all this crazy paperwork to be able to sell out. You see people selling stuff all over the place in New Orleans, and it made it very difficult for me to do it in a legit way. But I get all the permitting. I'm in that parking lot, got this big tent. We sell stuff before the game. It's great. But the moment that I realized, wait, we're going to win this game, I run back to the tent. I had some buddies that were helping me. We'd gone way out on a limb and had gotten like national champions merchandise printed.
No way.
I had it in a U-Haul parked in the parking lot. And so we, it's like hitting the lottery here, right?
Yeah,
like, we've won. I've got all this stuff. We bring it all out. And just in a matter of like 45 minutes, we do probably the best month I've ever had in sales in like that 45 minutes because of just the rush of everybody coming out of the Superdome down Poydras. We're one of the first things they see. They want to, everybody's excited, and it's just you couldn't take people's money fast enough and give them shirts. It was just craziness, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun. I unfortunately only got to experience that once. They didn't. 2011 was kind of a letdown on that national championship, scoring 0 points, and so like I got to see, I got to feel the high highs. Honestly, the high was so high though that I realized like how crazy it was that we made that bet with the U-Haul full of T-shirts. I didn't make that bet in 2011, and I'm glad that I did not, because those shirts would have all been shipped overseas.
Thank you to Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge for making this show possible. Nick Pentis is a past guest. We love having him on. Listening to him talk about the culture they have over at Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge is really an incredible thing to hear. How they treat not only their employees, but every customer that walks through the door. You are more than just a number to them. They're going to give you that white glove concierge service every step of the way. They're going to make you feel like family and take what can be a stressful time in people's life, shopping for a car. They're going to make it so enjoyable and so pleasurable. You're going to want to go back there time and time again for every new vehicle. Thank you so very much for Mercedes-Benz of making this show possible.
Well, and it's tough as an entrepreneur when you hit that high of high. It's like, where do you go from here?
So where do I go from there is actually like kind of the evolution in the business. So I hit that high and was like, this is as good as it gets. What the chances of us winning a national championship every year are highly unlikely. And if we do, each one is going to be less than the one before because it now it's commonplace, right? And so I'd kind of played around with the idea of looking at other stores and same model in different campuses, and really what I came to was retail wasn't my thing. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. This is right before e-commerce. So I opened this store before Facebook was a thing. Okay. Just to kind of like level set.
Get some context there, yeah.
Right? So e-commerce, not that big. Amazon's not that big. It's all like early days. Looking back on it, it's like, well, that's what I should have done was a website and distribution through that. But I didn't know any better, and I'm like, well, let's do a store. Well, like 6 years in, I'm just like, this retail thing is just not for me. Like, I love the creativity. I loved interacting with people. I love the sales. I love the making of the thing. I didn't love making sure the store was open at 10 o'clock every day and the shelves are stocked and things are neatly arranged and folded and just all this other retail stuff that is kind of part of the game. And luckily I had one of my vendors that was on the wholesale side, interested in the retail side, and I was looking to get out of the retail side, and so we made it work, and that's who's there today with Bengals and Bandits.
I love it.
Yeah.
So just a clean transition and
so
sale.
it kind of allowed me to get out. I retained Tiger District. Obviously, they went with Bengals and Bandits, and so I kept it online. Was really going to focus on the online side of things, with the idea that I would have TigerDistrict.com doing LSU merchandise, and people. When I was thinking about growth, it was like, well, I can only sell LSU merchandise on this corner right here, right? Like I can't even sell like Tulane or other Louisiana university. I have to sell just LSU.
Right.
But online, I can do Tiger District and Roll Tide District and Gator District. And so at one point I had like 250 domain names of every district you can imagine, of all major baseball, basketball, football, NCAA district.com. And that was the next move, was to start going into those markets, but doing it online. And we did raise a little bit of money for that. Went after it. The year that we make the big push was when it was, we had the Honey Badger. We were undefeated going into the national championship, playing Alabama, like arch nemesis in the national championship. You couldn't get any better. And so when it was supposed to be about an effort of going broader and into other markets, we were kind of forced to like double down on LSU because that's what was hot at that moment. And it went from like hot to not very quickly, scoring those 0 points in the national championship. And so all that to be said, we had a strong foothold on the LSU market, but just never underestimated what it took to build that same brand awareness and sales distribution for LSU. To duplicate that in other markets was just a lot more difficult than we imagined.
Well, your location led to the success of Tiger District.
And
you're at the gates of campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And that helped tremendously. We were kind of known for our game day shirts. That was our big thing, was having a shirt for each game day, or at least the big games, and trying to do that in other universities where we didn't have that physical presence for people to understand that. It definitely was just more difficult. So it was one of those business lessons that had to be learned the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking 250 designs a week. Like that that's a lot of design work.
Yeah.
So you exit the retail space, dabble in the online space.
Got into
what's
online
the next
space. And then I got into this like rhythm of thinking it was cool to be the serial entrepreneur, because like, man, I'm so interested in all these different things, and I have this seasonality of football season's crazy, and then it comes down pretty hard. Even if basketball and baseball do well, they just don't bring the sales that football does.
Right.
And so I have this period of the year where I'm not super busy. And so then, I'm twiddling my thumbs like, okay, well, what do I do next? And there's only so much you can do to better your business when it's around football. Like I can't make football season come any faster. And I always just end up in other things. Like that's when my food truck started. I got both food trucks that I ended up being involved with were started in the spring after a busy football season. And so I did Ninja Snowballs was the first one. And that was like a food truck with snowballs. Twitter was getting to be big. The food truck scene was happening in other cities. It wasn't happening here yet. And I'm like, I think I can navigate how to do this. There was no food truck permit that you could get downtown. Had to, cobble together all these other things that were like, would suffice if somebody said, let me see your permit. You could show them something, and they couldn't say, well, that's not the right thing, because there wasn't a right thing. And did that, then got into Taco de Paco, did a entrepreneurial co-working space out at Perkins Row for a little while. And just dabbled in way too many things. So now it's like I hear serial entrepreneur and it makes me cringe, because it's like, no, that just means you're like disorganized and like chasing shiny things. For me, that's what it's meant for me. Like anybody I've seen that's done well and been successful with many ventures is someone that's already done really well in one thing. and then gone into multiple ventures. And there's an exception to all of those, but yeah, I've had to try to back off of that. People all the time are like, oh man, you've got so many businesses, that's so cool. It's like, no. That just means I know how to fill out a form on the Secretary of State's website, and it's actually really easy. You too can have a business in about 10 minutes if you'd like. Like, there's more to it than that, you know?
Thank you so very much to Building 5 for becoming the latest sponsor of the Patty G Show. We are going to be filming once a month at Building 5. We're going to post about it on our social so you can come and visit with us. Building 5 is an excellent food establishment if you're into sharing boards and really getting a creative menu. Misty and Brumby have done an excellent job of creating an environment that's warm, welcoming, and inviting for every single occasion. Go on over to Building 5 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and tell them that the Patty G Show sent you.
So Ninja Snowballs being your first food truck endeavor.
Correct.
I mean, why Ninja Snowballs?
So context of that corner of campus, I had somebody that worked with me from New Orleans, and she was like, man, there's no good snowballs around this side of campus, you know? And she grew up with great snowball options in New Orleans, and she's like, man, we should have a snowball. So like, we'll park it in that parking spot right in front of the store, and it would do great. You know, it's a great location. And I'm like, snowball, like it not the biggest barrier of entry to get into. That wasn't that interesting to me. Mm-hmm. But I had been reading about food trucks and paying attention to Twitter, and those were all like things that were starting to emerge. And so I said, well, if we could do it, if we could combine the two, that would be interesting. I don't want to do just a snowball stand. If we could make it this mobile thing, and that's where it was. The concept of the ninja, like it shows up in different places, and you only know where it's going to be based on Twitter, and it was well received. People like that, and from that, it was like, well, that's a that's a summertime endeavor, right? It's not really a full year type thing. How can we take this and do something that we can do year round? And I'm a huge fan of tacos. I love tacos. I like making tacos, and somebody approached me about actually John Snow at Emergent Method.
Yep.
Brought up this I think he was still in college at the time. He had this very well thought out, or he just finished college and was in his first job, and had like a legit business plan of this taco stand. I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's figure this out. And that's how Taco to Paco came about.
So when did you exit from
Ninja Snowballs,
because they're still around.
Yeah. I have to say I'm proud of the most of these things are still operational. Ninja Snowballs, I don't really remember. I feel like that was like 2013, 2014. I know exactly when I got out of Taco to Paco because I promised my wife I would be out of the food truck business before my daughter was born in February of 2016. So I know, and like we sold it the week before she was born. So Ninja Snowballs would have been right before that. And then, so that would probably been 2013, 2014, somewhere around there.
Yeah, because they're still like
Ninja
Snowballs is like a name.
I still get fun. It's funny.
Like an incredible name.
Yeah, people send me text all the time of, hey, I saw this out there, or it was at this event. I think they do a bunch of weddings and catered events and things like that. So I love the fact that they're still rolling with it.
Oh yeah, well, and they'd go to like baseball games and stuff now. I mean, it's phenomenal to see.
Yep.
And now it's a selling point. I mean, we're in Louisiana, so you get 10 months out of the year.
Right.
You can sell snowballs.
Right.
11, depending if it's a warm year or not.
Exactly.
So when you hear, Ninja Snowballs is going to be there, it's like this attraction of, wait, anytime you hear a food truck's going to be anywhere, it's always attractive.
I think I have the pencil drawing sketch I did of that logo of the cone ninja, literally on, I think it was either the back of a napkin or some scrap sheet of paper. But that, through all of those processes, what I realized was that was where I really enjoyed that side of it, was the creation of the brand, the marketing, the sales, that part of it, which is where I kind of leaned more towards the internet and its like wide distribution of being able to focus on things that I loved, and from there doing those things, the going out to other markets with the collegiate shirts, that was always the main thing, right? And it didn't take off in the other markets like we had hoped. And truth be told, had my first child, had a son, end of 2012, and it was like, all right, this isn't about me. It's not just me anymore. I gotta figure this out and get some steady income or something that's not totally reliant on 18 to 22-year-olds athletic performance on the football field, you know?
Yeah.
And because there was a distinct correlation between wins and losses and sales, right?
And now the whole economy of Baton Rouge is so much heavily weighted on that. It's ridiculous.
You throw NIL in, and it's just it's a whole other beast.
It's kids on a field with some pigskin.
It's crazy to me. I just can't imagine. But yeah, it's just a different game. It's a different game, and yeah. I'm happy to like look at it from afar now and not be engulfed in it. But so as I'm transitioning out of that, I was in the tech park, and there was this other company in there. Actually, a guy that had worked for me with Tiger District had gone to work for these guys doing ACT test prep, and it was like some books and a weekend course, and it was starting to take off. And literally one day they walked in the office saying, "Hey, there's some state funding, some things changing in the laws to make it everyone. It's mandatory that all juniors take the ACT. There's these things changing in the environment that we think are going to be really good for the business. Would you be interested in coming on board and helping us to grow this thing?" And like, yeah, it was at the time it looked like contract work of just something that would bring in some steady pay, and then like 6 months later, I went in full time and kind of ended up being a co-founder to what today is MasteryPrep. And that first year we went from like $300,000 in revenue to $3.5 million in revenue, and
Holy
just
smokes.
it was lights out. It was just crazy growth. It was a ton of fun, and I was really I had transition from this, still using my creative brain and building stuff to more of it's like operations and scale and growth and building a team and how do we attack these new markets to get sales. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, and now you've got the history of sales kind of pushing you into this MasteryPrep deal.
Right.
And you look at it and you have 5 different industries you've created businesses over.
right.
And they've all been wildly successful.
That's debatable, but I'm still here.
Successful.
I'm still here.
Yeah,
I'm still here.
You're not, underneath the overpass right now.
Not today.
So, and with MasteryPrep being something, education, totally different from tacos and snowballs. Your last endeavor before there. What are the conversations like around the Loftus dinner table when you're considering saying, I'm stopping to sell tacos to start helping kids take the ACT?
I think, again, it's this, I can weave that thread of, for one, I took the ACT 8 times as in high school. Okay. I was trying to hit this score of, I forget what, in Mississippi, we don't have tops. We had some other things I'd taken 8 times and I still came short by like a point. And so I had this understanding of what it takes to prepare. I was not prepared in my school. That was all outside stuff. I was prepared for English. Like I had a really great AP English teacher, but the rest of it was kind of left to my own devices on figuring that out. In small town Mississippi, not a ton of places I could go for that additional help. And so that part spoke to me. And there was a real market there, like the way that the laws were changing, that it made it mandatory. And so I thought it was a great story of being able to do something really good, providing this needed help that gives people access to college in an environment where they otherwise wouldn't get it, but giving them something that's of high value. There's some real quality there, and we can make money doing it. That's a win-win. So it was more about those conversations. At this point, almost 10 years in. My wife and I dated for like 8 years before we got married. So she'd been around for a while at this point. And
she's seen some endeavors.
Yeah, she kind of knows what she got into. And all she had to hear was like regular paycheck. It wasn't a whole lot of conversation after that, So that's, it's funny because people always ask, well, what does your wife think of this? And this one, she's got all of the, especially as we get into the crypto side of it, which we're closing in on. But it's usually kind of, well, here's the market that I see, here's the timing of it and the opportunity, and here's why I think that the time is now. And she's largely been on board with that along the way.
Well, and I think your eye for markets has been one that's hit in just about every one of your endeavors.
There's been a couple of times where there's definitely this notion of being first to market in business a lot of times.
Right.
I've definitely experienced where you can be too early. When we started those first food trucks, we were having to explain to people why it was okay to be buying food off the street from an old UPS truck. That wasn't something that people inherently understood. No matter how much they're doing it in New York or Austin or these other cool places, here in Baton Rouge, they'd never bought food off of a truck, and that was kind of strange. And the same thing with Entrepreneur Headquarters, the co-working space in Perkins Road. That was like co-working spaces pre-WeWork or any of all that, that stuff. And people are like, well, no, I want my own individual office. I don't want to be out in the open where other people can see what I'm doing. And, so the thing I've learned, there's definitely like seeing a market, but timing is almost just as important, because if you're really early, then you've got to be really well funded to be able to stick it out until people do understand what it is that you're doing. And back to the serial entrepreneur thing, I got into it because I was curious and interested, and it was exciting, and people were talking about it. We're in all these magazines for Taco de Paco and Cover of 225 and things like that. So it's exciting. It didn't always necessarily translate to the bottom line.
Right.
And then I would move on to the next exciting thing. And so, now I'm trying to sit in this place of like, let's focus on the bottom line. And if it's not exciting, that's okay. Let's make a good business out of it.
So
McLavy Ltd, a proud sponsor of the Patty G Show, has been serving the Baton Rouge area proudly for 40 plus years. Gentlemen and ladies, if you're shopping for your man, there is no other place in the Baton Rouge area to get your clothing, whether it's game day needs, everyday needs, business attire, formal attire, whatever you want. Go over there, see Frank and Ashley. It's a father-daughter duo. They do incredible things in their store. They will outfit you from as simply a shirt that you need for one evening or all the way to a full wardrobe overhaul. They're going to take care of you every step of the way, and be sure and let them know that Patty G Show sent you.
So before we get into the fundraising part that I want to ask you about, you kind of glossed over the co-working space in Perkins Road. We never touched on
for
that.
right reasons. Yeah, it was. I did that with some other people, and it was a thing. Like it again never really got off the ground. I saw you had Derek Fitch on recently. They had something that they were doing downtown in one of their spare buildings. We quickly got to this point of not spare buildings, but a building that they had spare space. That's what was happening. As big retail developers were like, "Oh, I've got a whole floor. We can do that here." And so, not that it was a commodity, but really what we learned is the places like that did really well built community. Mm-hmm. And again, I was chasing the excitement and the hype, and building community is operations. That takes time, that takes effort, and if it didn't happen overnight, I was like, next shiny thing. So
right.
Yeah.
So then back to the serial entrepreneur, the continuing to find that excitement. You said something about being on the 225 cover, being on covers of magazines, didn't always necessarily translate to the bottom line.
I would almost say never.
And that's what I'm getting at. Is like everybody initially sees these people featured here, there, and everywhere, and their immediate thought is, well, if somebody's picking them up and talking about them, they obviously have to be blowing it out of the water. Yeah. But in reality, it's like you're either just upcoming, which means you're still burning cash, or you're trying to exit, and so you're vamping up your image. And so it's like they never catch people, I feel, at their like peak performance time. It's like they're up and coming, they're still burning cash and still in the red, but they're here.
I definitely used to chase that way more, and nothing against the media or folks doing podcasts or any kind of like distribution on that front. It's just like there was a time where I thought that, especially being a consumer-facing business, I want to do anything that got us in front of potential consumers, and I would justify the effort that took of, well, we're on the cover of the magazine. And look, when we had the big bright orange truck on the cover of 225, it was good for business, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But it's not like the end-all, be-all. You know, it wasn't like we could hang it up and not try anymore because that had happened. There's still so much more to do. You know, I remember I mean, it's luck, it's timing, crazy, you know, things coming together. But I was featured in Forbes that 2011 season where we're raising money. We just raised money. It's an undefeated season. Honey Badger is a thing, and we have the Honey Badger t-shirt, and we're on the way to the national championship. And I get featured in Forbes under this headline of college football's biggest entrepreneur. And at the time, I'm like, oh, like this,
like this is it.
It doesn't get any bigger than this, right? And so now I'm like, I'm able to go shop this article, and you're right, it would open some doors. There would be like validation that occurred because Forbes spent time with me and wrote an article and published it. That was a validator of sorts, right? And so that helped. But I'll never forget, I was raising money from this one guy in Texas that he's like, man, I said something about Forbes. He's like, look, let me tell you this. I don't care about what publication has written about you, because I got all these guys in my industry. He was in oil and gas. I got all these guys in my business that are chasing this magazine cover or that article, and it's all about that for them. And meanwhile, I'm running circles around them. And I kind of took a step back and like, wow, I hadn't really thought about that, you know, because it's an effort. There is to be prepared for the interview, to push the interview out and make sure people see it. Like all of this stuff, you spend all of this mental time thinking about it, and for what? Like I can't point to that Forbes article, which would be arguably the biggest media hit at that point for me. I don't know really how that moved the needle.
Right.
And at the time, I thought it was game over. Like, I don't need to do anything else. And it was like, actually, I need to keep doing everything else, because it didn't really make that big of a difference for me personally. You know, maybe we sold a few more shirts. I don't know. I mean, it's still early days e-commerce, so not the best tracking on that stuff. But there wasn't a link on the Forbes website to tigerdistrict.com.
Yeah.
You know, there's a picture of our Honey Badger shirt, so that kind of helped. But yeah, it's interesting when you look back of like how much of a big deal you made about it, and then it's kind of, you know, similar. We were on the cooking channel with Taco de Paco, and that was a great hit. But you know who's not buying tacos from a Baton Rouge food truck? Everybody outside of Baton Rouge.
Everybody washing outside.
Right? And so like it's really cool. And in some ways you just have to be honest with yourself of like, what does it actually mean? And so now I've not that I don't have the time for that as much as it's just I'm not seeking it. That's not something I'm chasing like I used to.
Well, and it's shown like not necessarily you've already had success. It's you've shown maturity in the fact that you're like, I don't need to be on a cover. I have to be focusing on what I'm doing.
Yeah,
and if they give me a call,
totally
based on what I'm doing, and they say, hey, we want to talk to you, we want to do this, say, great, we'll make it work. But no longer are you saying, hey, submit this out for publishing, send this press release.
Right.
You're not sending out press releases, which people often get caught up. But again, there's some good intentions there of, I got to get my word out, I got to get my business out.
Totally
it's viewed as getting this brand and this image out there, but not so much of, well, that's the pinnacle. If I'm in Forbes, like I've made it.
That's an ego.
I've done this.
That's an ego thing.
Exactly. It's a internalized goal that people can have, and again, it's not necessarily a vain goal, but it is like a why. What comes next?
Right.
You know, okay, that article comes out, that's a timestamp.
Right.
What do you do with it? Where do you go from being on Forbes?
Right.
Next, like what is your next endeavor? because you can't walk around with the newspaper clippings in your pocket all the time and be like, look at me, see me? This is like,
this was me.
Right.
At this point, it's like, hey, look at what I was 15 years ago, 13 years ago.
Yeah. It's like where are they now? What are they doing now? You know? So
right. Yeah. Don't get me started on list. Not to disparage list. I've been on the list. I don't care as much anymore.
Yeah. Well, and it shows that you've now kind of taken what that person told you of get focused on your crafts, and then you're running circles around the people that are focused on getting on the lists.
So I just finished this great book called Wanting. Okay, and it's about desire and where that comes from. And we won't get, this is not about that, but talking about list, there's a story of this guy that is a Michelin 3-star restaurant, and I think it's multi-generational in France, and what they did to be on that list, and all of the just insanity that comes with getting on it but remaining there, and he gets to a point where they're like, we don't want this anymore. And so he submits a letter. He's like, hey, I'd like to basically resign from the list. I'm like, what? Like, can you do that? I don't know. Like, people don't
resign from the list.
Yeah, people don't do that. He's like, no, I'm opting out. Like, I don't want the scrutiny of day to day. We never know who's going to come in or how we have to be. And like, we just want to put out a good product and then it be about that, not about this list. And so he gets off it and he just talks about quality of life and how he was able to do what he wanted to do with his business, as opposed to like always chasing this list. Now you could argue, well, that's easier said than done when you're on the list trying to get off, as opposed to being
trying
off
to get
the
on
list,
the
trying
list,
to get on it. But I just thought, but it's an interesting thing about that, of like the people that get there are even like, oh, what? There's something that comes with that, and it may not be exactly what you wanted. And so I think you have to be clear about those intentions. When you're putting massive effort toward it. When it just comes because you've got a great product, you've been doing it long enough, and somebody wants to highlight that, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But when you make it your entire effort, you really need to know what you're going after.
I think that's the difference maker between individuals, are those that are striving to better pursue their craft, and then the list comes along the way, instead of those trying to get their craft worthy of being on a list.
Right.
Like it's... a list is a list is a list, and it's going to be there. How many people have been on there? It may be a small goal of yours, be like, hey, one day I want this thing to be so good people pick us up.
Right.
But it shouldn't be, hey, I want to build this thing so we get picked up on this list.
Right.
Right. So from there, you hit all this stuff, and now you've, again, exited from another company.
So we have MasteryPrep. So I actually stepped out of the day-to-day as it was going from like 1,000% growth to, a meager 50% growth.
Oh, terrible 50% growth.
So, the wheels aren't falling off. We've got this engine. I had stepped away from the day-to-day on that and ended up getting involved with a guy that is an entrepreneur that had recently sold his business, was starting to put something together in the AI space. It was around AI and email marketing. It was a very interesting concept. I had done a lot of email marketing in all of the other businesses, so I understood that. And so this was 2017, early 2018. I knew that I wanted to either go into something crypto related or AI. And knowing what I knew at that point about timing, the crypto thing just didn't feel like the right time. It still felt really fresh and early. And lo and behold, AI was still pretty early then too. But I was working with somebody that had been there and done that on another level than me, and I wanted to be a part of that. And so that was with Rasa, doing AI and email marketing, like newsletters type stuff. And so did that for about 4 years, grew that up, got that product really out there in what it is, and then got to a point where it was, the crypto stuff had kind of been on the side, and I dabbled in multiple pieces of it. So never trading in and out or that kind of thing, but really seeking to understand what was going on in this space. When I first heard about Bitcoin, it was probably like 2013. And I thought it was dumb. I was like, this is another version of PayPal. Like, why do we need this? We have a way to transact digitally between people. And so kind of passed it up. And then had somebody actually here from Baton Rouge that explained Ethereum to me and what it was, and this whole, decentralized way of doing things on the blockchain that was really exciting to me. And I'd always felt like I kind of missed the cusp of the internet, the e-commerce side, like going in the physical store before the e-commerce. Like I missed being in early on that, and I felt like I was getting another opportunity around that on the crypto side. And so being on the side for a few years, I'd done enough in it, and it had gotten to a point where it was like, I have to go pursue this. I have to go pursue this full time. Now again, timing being what it is, I think it's important. You can't control it usually, but we ended up raising some good money to get started as an infrastructure of blockchain business. So again, not trading and price volatility and in and out of the markets on a daily basis, but more of providing the physical hardware, the computers that keep the network going, doing that for Ethereum, doing that for this thing called Helium, and so Helium and Ethereum mining were kind of the genesis of it, and raised some money, and I'm talking about 2 months. I mean, we hadn't even finished raising money by the time the market started to really come down. I mean, it was taking a nosedive. You had this stuff called Terra Luna and a few other things that went sideways and really left a bad taste in people's mouths. And then 6 months later, you had FTX, and it was just like, man, in the first year, our basically entire business model got thrown up in the air. And there were pieces of things that were making sense, but it was nothing what we had started with. Ethereum mining. Ethereum went through what they called the merge, which was a protocol change that basically made mining not possible anymore. And we knew that was coming, but we thought we had about 6 months of it left. So that happened faster. Because of the downturn and all the other things, Helium made less sense from an economic standpoint. And so it was like, man, what are we going to do? And we had some property that luckily we had purchased in St. James Parish for building out a mining facility, and since then have gone all in on Bitcoin mining. And so that is where I stand today. It is, people's first question usually is like, well, what does your wife think of that? Like, the last thing she wants to do is talk to you about Bitcoin or blockchain or mining. It was more of, kind of this track record of seeing things, and she knew that I had seen this crypto market for several years now and had waited. I wasn't jumping on it at the first, shiny object. I'd put in some time and effort, and at that point had a track record of in crypto doing well. The things that I'd gotten in on and traded up and done well with. So it was like, okay, well, the next iteration of this is going into an actual business and going bigger with this. And then the bottom drops out, and it's like we got to figure this out. Like that's all there is to it.
Yeah, and now you've got this really, really large crash.
Yeah,
in the market. I mean, like half of what it was 6 months ago.
Yeah, so many things that I've learned in the space. I mean, it's interesting. So most people just see the price of where it was, right? And so I was looking back on this. So a year ago, it was at like $16,000, $17,000 Bitcoin. A year before that, it was at like $70,000. Okay, today it's around 37. So it was up here, it comes down, then it's like double what it was at its lowest. It's just all this up and down. Well, we're getting into the physical infrastructure space of it, right? We're not trading. What most people don't see, while they see the price go down, they don't see the price of the equipment we're buying dramatically drop. So the equipment we need to do this business dropped more than the price of the Bitcoin. And so, I mean, for example, I've got machines in our building now that we've outfitted this massive building with that in January 22 were costing people around 20 grand a pop. We ended up buying some at like $1,500, $1,700 a pop. So that's a massive swing. So yes, Bitcoin is worth less, but the machines were even further down.
Yeah.
And so we were able to scoop all that up. And so the best analogy I have for the business that we are in today may not be the most it's a little controversial because it's oil and gas in an ESG world, but it's very similar to oil producers in that they have a long-term outlook on where oil is going to be, and maybe they're able to produce oil at $40 a barrel, right? And the market is at $40 or $50 a barrel, so they can barely break even. But they didn't put together this operation for $50 barrel oil. They put it together for $100 barrel oil, and so they just need to be able to hold on until it gets to that point, if it gets to that point. But if they've done this, they probably believe it will be at that point someday. And that's the same with us in Bitcoin. It's like we have this input of large-scale electricity, and it's the number of machines I can get my hands on. We were able to get our hands on a lot of them because the price went down significantly. Well, now I've got to be able to hold on while the price is lower to mine until that price goes up. Because again, in the oil business, if you wait to start producing barrels of oil until it's $100 a barrel, then the equipment to do that is going to cost you more and maybe hard to get because everybody's already gotten it.
Right.
Same with Bitcoin. Like if everybody's like, oh, what if it goes 100,000 or 250,000? Like crazy numbers. I don't speculate on that. We think it will go up. I don't know when or where
or how much.
I think it'll go up. But if Bitcoin were to go to $100,000 tomorrow, you'd be hard pressed to get these same machines at these quantities for the prices that we got them. You would, if you were able to get them, they would cost you way more, right? And so now we're hopefully positioned for this. What looks like could be a turn. I'm, knock on wood, hesitant to say it too loudly, but there's talk of these Bitcoin ETFs. There's the Bitcoin halving, which is where the payouts for Bitcoin reduce by half, which means that scarcity increases, and you usually see some price increase around that. So there's the makings of it, right? China could invade Taiwan and blow it all up, and it goes to $10,000, and now we're looking silly on bad timing. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong. But I've learned in business, every business has things that can go wrong. Every business has things that you have to adjust for, and you can't see the future. And in this case, I don't think I could do this business having not done all of the others, because all of the others have taught me things along the way that have gotten me to here. Mm-hmm. And now it's a bit of muscle memory,
right,
and comfort with risk and understanding which risks to take and which not to take. People are like, oh, well, you're in the Bitcoin world. Are you doing the day trading and shorting? And it's like, look, I'm already doing something really risky. I don't need to throw risk on top of risk on top of risk, right? So even I recognize there's a time and place. But the stuff that I've had to deal with, just the craziness, because there are no rules, there's no playbook, there's no blueprint on how to do this. I literally had to build out this facility myself with my own hands on a lot of aspects of it, because people just didn't understand what we were doing. Wait, how you want to set it up, but it's not going to have AC, but it's going to have air, and it's a lot of power. And it's just I'm like, look, I know what I want to do. Let me build it. We'll have this prototype. I can take this and we'll replicate it out. Hopefully, that's going to be the model now.
Thank you so very much to Currency Bank, a proud sponsor of the Patty G Show. If you are looking for a business bank that fosters on 3 core values, relationships, service, and technology, Currency Bank is the place for you. They pride themselves on convenient, accessible, and secure online banking resources where you can manage your account balances, initiate transfers, enroll with e-statements, and more via their online portal. Between the relationships, the service, and the technology, they are going to be that partner with your business every step of the way, regardless of what you need. Currency Bank is the bank for business owners.
Now, and so those experiences in the past of navigating uncertainty when there's not a food truck license that you can go apply for, and what you have to do is get like an itinerant peddler license and a food certification and a small business and a peddler's license. Like you kind of have to make your way in an area where there isn't a way.
Yeah.
And that is, I've got that in spades.
I was about to say, you kind of wrote the book on that.
Well, in the Bitcoin world, it really is the Wild West. And so every day is exciting. It might be like, I want to pull my hair out exciting, but it's exciting stuff, kind of trying to blaze some trails. And look, I don't want to make it sound like I'm not the only one doing this. There are other people doing this. There's not many others like in Louisiana that are doing this. I haven't run into anybody doing like large scale. I think there's one or two others based on some comments from Entergy, of other people doing that. But by and large, it's still early industry. I'm leaving tomorrow to go to a conference where we're going to visit some other Bitcoin factories in Texas, and outside of Fort Worth and Dallas area, just to see kind of like, okay, well, how did they set it up? Did we do this the same way, or did they do something differently? Like, is it something about their setup that means they have to do it in this way and we don't, or should we be considering this? There's a lot of interesting stuff, and anytime you take large scale power, that's the other hard part I didn't mention earlier. Like, even if you were able to get all the machines I mentioned and get them at a price that you wanted, you now have to find a place to plug them in, and that's just,
and the bills on it.
That's just not, like, those aren't off the shelf things. It takes time and a lot of effort to get a building with that much power there, and so that's where interesting things come into play. It's another thing I'm looking at in Texas is taking what would be basically stranded power, solar energy that's not being used, hydro that's not being used, wind that's not being used. You see in Louisiana more relevant are like flares. You see these big flare stacks. Like, that's something being burned as a byproduct, as a waste, right? You can take that in a lot of cases if it's, let's say it's natural gas. Instead of burning that natural gas off in the air, you could put that natural gas into a generator that generates electricity that you then plug in your Bitcoin miners to, and now you kind of flip this narrative on its head of like the environmental impact of Bitcoin, where it's like, well, no, if done correctly, Bitcoin mining could be a part of the solution for any environmental concerns, because we were talking about earlier before the show of like energy is hard. It's complex. Like, these lights being on here when we flip the switch and then going off when we want it, and that being balanced and all of those things, it's really remarkable. And doing it on a really large scale is difficult. And not many other avenues do you have where you can take a big consumer of power in a small footprint and then use that to help balance or provide resiliency or reliability. There's a lot of things that can come into play with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces that are always changing.
Yeah, I thought it was you plug in some computers and you make money, and it's way more than that. It's way more complicated than that. It's way more interesting than that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, so to your point of you've got this whole playbook of how do you write the path of something that hadn't really been done before. I mean, and basically every one of your endeavors, you were kind of forging how does that happen under the certain set of rules and the given regulations. I mean, going back to 5th grade with the handbook didn't say you couldn't sell.
Right.
Now the handbook says you can't sell. Food trucks weren't a thing. Now they're a thing. And it's like you've kind of paved the way and helped other people figure out, like, you've taken that brunt of the risk of saying, I want to try this thing out. Nobody really has any rules or guidelines for me to follow. I guess I'll just kind of figure it out as we go.
Yep.
And that's kind of been like, at least from what I've heard, your kind of entrepreneurial.
It is, for
journey,
better
man.
Or worse. I feel like there's a lot of arrows in my back for being out there in the front. But yeah, that I've come to appreciate and learn that is a skill set in itself of just navigating that and having that risk tolerance again, it's a little bit of muscle memory of being able to react to things a little quicker because having experienced in the past. I was thinking my son just made the basketball team, and we were shooting shots last night. I'm like, no, shooting at, just same spot, shooting over and over and over and over again. And getting someone, I was like, look, man, it just needs to be muscle memory, right? Like, you just, boom, shoot it, make it, and we got to do it a bunch of times. And on the drive here, I was thinking about, like, wow, that's kind of the same thing that's been for me of these businesses and start, I never used to understand why someone would buy a franchise. I'm like, what fun is that? Like, everything's already done for you. Everything's done for you. You just like open this book and follow the rules. And I know it's harder than that, but you do have a playbook. And I've always been on the side of, I like to write the playbook. And I didn't know that was a thing or a difference and so recognizing that over time of understanding the skill set being on the startup and the maintenance and then our growth and then maintenance, like those are all different journeys. And so either I have to develop as an entrepreneur or I have to recognize where I'm supposed to be, and then as that next phase comes in, find somebody else for it. And I think I'm at a place in life now, having gone through all the things, I want to see it through. I look at this as at least a 10-year endeavor. I mean, while 10 years in crypto seems like craziness, because like that's just so far in the future for this particular industry. I mean, it's almost double the life, a little less, but thinking about that is like, okay, but when I look through it, real successes, we had a good exit with MasteryPrep. That took about 10 years. Several other friends that have had acquisitions or exits of any substance took 10, 12, maybe it was 9 or 11, but like it was a decade of effort. And this is something that I feel like not only do I need to look at it like that, like this is something I got to be in for a decade or more, but I'm also interested in it. Like I think there's plenty enough to keep me interested, and I've gotten over the need for it having to be interesting all the time.
Right.
Like some days it's just work. Like I'm not joking when I say I'm a high tech like janitor. Like I got to go back to this warehouse on my way home and literally vacuum up the mosquitoes that are all over the building because they're like clogging the fans of the computers. And we just have this massive, like all of a sudden rain or whatever, mosquitoes everywhere. And that's the glamorous life of a Bitcoin miner, is vacuuming up piles of mosquitoes. But not anything shiny or interesting about that, but it's like what has to be done. And
exactly.
And I'm the one that has to do it.
Well, man, as we kind of start to wrap up the show, I know we could be here for hours.
Yeah.
Going through all your endeavors and also the next paths of everything. We like to ask every guest the same set of questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, what is something you did as a kid you wish you could still do today?
Something I used to do as a kid. I didn't even realize this back then because I like to build. I got my construction license, my contractor's license during COVID, just because it's something I enjoy. I've used it a good bit on the Bitcoin factory. But as a kid, I used to make tree houses all the time. I lived in a rural area out in the woods, and would make a tree house only to finish it and then go make another tree house. And so these woods are littered with tree houses all around my house back in Mississippi. I would love nothing more than to be able to just spend some time building tree houses.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just that satisfaction of knowing you built something, it's stable, it's sturdy, and it's
and it's just it's like you took some trees and now you have a place to live. As an 8-year-old, I'm not really looking to live in the trees right now, but
yeah, I don't think your wife would follow you on that endeavor.
No, I don't think she would. That's like the doghouse for me.
Right,
you go get in your tree house.
So you've done a wide array of business endeavors, business industries, and just starting, selling, building, growing, expanding. What are like 3 lessons you've kind of learned throughout your process?
One I just mentioned of it takes time. you can read these articles of Instagram blowing up to $1 billion company in 18 months or whatever craziness. You have to recognize that those are anomalies, and it just takes time. We live in a world where things are so fast that you kid yourself in thinking that everything will be fast and you can just spin something out and it'll be a success. And now we live in a world where it is so much easier to launch a website or brand or do a new logo or whatever, that you think the success is going to be faster because of that. And it's like, no, because it's so easy to do that, it's so easy for everybody else to do that too. Right. And success is just, it just comes down to hard work a lot of times, timing and hard work. So say things take longer. I read this interesting article probably about 10 years ago that kind of reset things for me, because I was always trying to hit a grand slam. It was never about the base hits or the consistency and sustainability. It was just like go big, go home kind of attitude. And it was this article, kind of pitching this idea of trying to peak at 65 years old. Like, don't peak tomorrow. Try to build your life, live your life so that you're peaking at 65. And I'm sure some people would be like, oh, not 65, you want to do 75, or we're living longer, whatever. But the point is, don't try to do it all today. And so in line with things take longer, it's also don't give yourself time and build upon those successes. I know a lot of people, like we're talking about the chasing the media and the hits. It's like that was their thing. They wanted to be known. They wanted to get distribution or on the cover or on this article, and then they get there, and then it's like, okay, now what?
Now what do you do?
Well, not only that, but then you look back and you're like, man, that person's nowhere to be found. Like that was their peak. I don't want that. I want to build upon the peaks. I don't want to look back and go, that was the best there was. So giving it time, not peaking too early, and then what would be a third one? I think understanding what we were talking about earlier with people, of just there's still a people aspect in all of this, and social media can remove that. The speed of things can remove that, and realizing that that business still is between people. Like robots aren't doing business with robots yet, right? Like that's not where we are. There are people in these businesses. So even as crazy of a world as crypto is, like this conference I'm going tomorrow, these are the people behind those things, the efforts, the blockchains, the whatever. And I encourage people to not forget that aspect, because it's not only is important, that's cliche that your people are important, but now it's like, well, we kind of have to remember that. Like it is a world that with AI and generative voice and video, and you can just make things up with a couple keystrokes. You still got to remember that it's people on the other side of the transaction.
No, 100%. And it's making sure that you treat those people as you want to be treated, and you got to keep them happy and satisfied. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard business endeavor to go down.
Totally.
So, well, Jared, man, I think we're starting to creep up in here at Building 5. People are starting to come in.
There you go. Party's starting to get started.
I know. So, man, thank you so much for your time here today. I really appreciate you coming and sitting down and sharing your journey, and I wish you well in your future endeavors. And
thanks for having me.
Keeping it pushing, man.
Yes, sir. Paving the way.
Absolutely. So thank you for coming, and thank you everybody else for listening or watching the show. I'm very appreciative of it. I know the guests are as well. Just a phenomenal resource of what you can do here in Louisiana and Baton Rouge, and the success that Jared has had is just a testament to that. There's so much opportunity here. Don't be afraid to pave your own way. If the rules aren't written, figure out the people that write them and help guide them in trying to what you're trying to do and accomplish, and just get it done. So y'all go out there, be courageous, figure out what you want to do, and don't peak too early, and don't stop chasing your dreams. So thank y'all so much. We're out of here.
Thank you.
Imagine taxiing on a plane looking toward the end of the runway. It seems so far away, it's even hard to see it. And that's what the concept of retirement probably felt like when you were in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, way far in the distance, not visible or even a concern. But as you turn 50, something happens. Retirement suddenly seems like something real, something not too far away. In your 50s, you are rolling down the runway. Retirement is getting closer and closer, faster and faster, weeks and months zipping by. But are you even ready for a successful takeoff to retirement? Fear not, there's still runway left. But the time is now. Time to make progress and time to get a plan. The Runway Decade will help you get organized, get energized, and give you the direction you need to take off to your desired retirement. The Runway Decade, building a pre-retirement flight plan in your 50s.
Thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Lake Men's Health Center with Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group. Guys, I know it's tough to get out and go to the doctor. I know it's challenging to find time in our busy days, but I promise you, signing up to be a part of this group with Dr. Curtis Chastain and Dr. Tyler Boudreau, you won't regret it for several reasons, but most of those being the fact of the time it saves, where you're able to get in on the same day, get that appointment done, and spend that time you need to talk with them about what your health goals and concerns are, as well as ensuring that the financial investments you have, you will be able to live out and see those come to fruition. So if you're an investing guy, you know all about and planning for the future and investing in the future. There's no other more important thing to invest in than your health. Make sure you go check them out, Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group Men's Health Center, and tell them Patty G sent you.
Patty G Show is proudly brought to you by Mimosa Handcrafted Jewelry. Mimosa Handcrafted Jewelry is a local business right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They create handcrafted jewelry for everyday use, that special occasion, whatever it may be. Gentlemen, they've got amazing jewelry both for male and female. Everyone is their audience. You know, after years of experimenting with everything from ceramic jewelry, glass beads, and enamel, they've settled in on the ancient art of lost wax casting. Is their main form of creating their work. They cast everything in bronze, sterling silver, and 14 karat gold. Every step of the way is done here right in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Proud sponsors of the Patty G Show. Mimosa Handcrafted Jewelers. Get out there and tell them that Patty G sent you, and they're going to take great care of you on your next order.
Welcome to the brand new Falaya mobile app. We took all the same tech that's helped hundreds of people sell their homes themselves and packed it into an easy-to-use app for your phone. When you download the Falaya mobile app on either the Apple or Android App Store, you'll immediately be able to see the power of this game-changing tool. From the seller's dashboard, you can navigate to all the information that you need. We intentionally separated everything into key groups, such as tasks to be completed, buyer leads for your listing, and contact information for everyone involved through closing. When you get an offer on your property, you can simply review and respond all within the app. No matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to monitor everything that's going on with your property from listed to sold. It's truly the power of Falaya in the palm of your hand. Download the app and see for yourself. Falaya, it's real estate reimagined.